All right, folks, big challenge for Carson Wentz and the Commanders on Sunday. Welcome to the DC Sports Huddle, sponsored by MGM National Harbor. It is time to change the game at BetMGM Sports. I am Rob Woodfork here with you at the controls alongside the fellas, Dave Preston and George Wallace, who is fresh from Ashburn and actually still smells like the outdoors a little bit. What'd you see at practice today? Obviously, this is the first division game of the season. Washington's actually lost 8 of the last 10 to Philly in this series. So, sort of what's the tone coming out of the locker room there as, they're trying to get things, trying to get that defense fixed for something that seems like we've been talking about now for 2 years.
Yeah, and the theme this week is division games, and if you want to win your division, you got to win division games. The Carson Wentz is a good story. Yeah, he's playing against Philadelphia. That's 2 teams ago now for him. But and players have said Carson's been a guy, and as Jack Del Rio said today, or Scott Turner, said today, he's just business as usual, and that's the kind of the guy Carson Wentz is. He's not an emotional guy, and Terry McLaurin said it yesterday, we're not trying to go out and win for him. We're not trying to win because it's the Eagles. It's the next game, and it'd be great for him. Yeah, but Carson's shown no signs of, win this for me, that kind of thing. So, and I don't expect to see that. I mean, that's just not who Carson is, or at least from what we've been able to know of him since he got here. But he said it's going to be fun. He cherished his time in Philadelphia. It's the NFL is a wild ride. There was 2 trades ago. But they need to start fast. And Terry said it great yesterday. He says, he goes, we need that first down, because that didn't come till the second quarter last week. And he said, that's how you want to get things going, is after that first down. And they just have to be better in the first half. They all know that, and they expect that to be the case against, let's face it, folks, a pretty good Eagles team where it is going to probably have a home field advantage. I hate to say it on Sunday.
Yeah, that's right. The Eagles fans, they travel pretty well, but especially at FedEx Field, where, let's be honest, the road team is really the home team in most instances. So, Look, everybody's expecting Washington to get blown off the field, and I don't necessarily disagree with that. There's definitely a scenario in which that can and maybe even should happen. But there's 2 factors that are going in Washington's favor going into this. Number 1, division games are a crapshoot. Throw out the numbers, throw out the records, throw out whatever the statistics are. When it's a division opponent, things have a weird way of playing out. And I think the second thing is, for all the talk of Carson Wentz in the offseason about, how he was going to play and all of that, he's actually been the thing that we've been worried about the least through 2 games so far. And if the first 2 games are any indication of what this offense is going to be, then they are able to keep up with just about anybody, right, Dave Preston?
Right. And I think when you look at Philadelphia, it's a very small sample size. Nobody, 2 weeks into the season, nobody is as great as your best game, and nobody is as bad as your worst game. And even though they looked awesome against a Minnesota team, against a quarterback who can't win on Monday night, even if there was no other team on the other side. Sorry,
we know.
Yeah.
Is that Kurt?
We know that here in Washington.
Well, let's just say that Kurt played like Kurt the other night. Yeah. And so the Philly defense is nothing special. I mean, if you look at, and after 2 weeks, you look at the numbers, best thing they do, I guess, defensive passing efficiency, they're number 3. They don't put a lot of pressure on the quarterback. They only have 3 sacks so far this season. And it's not like Kirk Cousins is the second coming of Randall Cunningham by any stretch of the imagination. So there will be opportunities for Washington to put points on the board. Carson Wentz, I think, is second in the league in yards per game. The team is number 2 in the NFL as far as passing yards, and that's with sacks thrown in there for good measure. Passer rating record of over 100, even with all of those interceptions. So I think they're going to be able to move the football. The question is, can this defense that is banged up front, that they have a defensive line where 2 guys weren't able to practice today, and another guy was limited. So are they going to be able to stop the #1 offense by yards in the NFL, the #2 rushing offense in the league. Jalen Hurts, who can kill you with his feet as well as with his arm. I think that's going to be a tough task. And as I think I mentioned in our preseason preview, there's going to be a lot of games where Carson Wentz is trying to throw this team back into the game after they fall behind by 1 to 2 scores. And I think this is going to be what Sunday's game is going to look like. You guys mentioned the crowd. I think it's going to have a holiday atmosphere, meaning a lot of green and red, Christmas.
Yeah, I mean,
you
no, you're right. And I think that's exactly what this week's going to come down to. It's going to be catch up for Carson Wentz. I mean, his offense again. I mean, Jalen Hurts is his own weapon. But yeah, this team, I mean, James Smith-Williams missed today. He's the newest addition to the injury report. Getting Cam Curl back is going to help. I mean, I really think that's going to help in the secondary, but the key is going to be up front. You're so right about that, in stopping that run and containing Jalen Hurts somehow, some way. You know, AJ Brown, keep in mind, forget about him. He's a new addition to this roster, and, you know, guys talking about how explosive he can be. But I still think it's going to be one up front on Sunday for Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's going to have to come down to that defensive line, because the defense, I mean, a lot of what ails it has been the inconsistency at linebacker, and the back end has had a lot of breakdowns without Cam Curl back there. But it calls to mind really the one thing that could turn the tide in Washington's favor is turnovers, and that hasn't gone their way through these first couple of games. If Carson Wentz protects the football, and we don't need him to throw for and by we, I mean Washington. I'm not including myself in that, but they don't need him to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns every week if he can limit or eliminate, better yet, the interceptions. So they're -3 in the turnover ratio. I know it's still very early in the season, but they have the second worst turnover ratio in the league right now. If they can get the ball away a couple of times and capitalize on those additional chances, there's a pretty good opportunity for them to steal one from the Eagles, Dave.
2 more, yeah, and 2 more points to that. I think if they can get off to a fast start, which they did not have against Detroit, and which they had against Jacksonville, but they couldn't sustain it for 3 quarters, and they had to play catch up in the final period of play. If they can jump out and take a lead against Philadelphia, that makes the Eagles a little bit more predictable, and that plays more into the hands of defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio. That lets his defensive line, if they are healthy, pin their ears back and put pressure on the passer, which is in a perfect world, which is what this defense is designed to do, get teams on 3rd and long. And they've, after last year's disaster, again, it's only been 2 weeks, guys, but right now, Washington ranks 5th in the league in getting off the field on 3rd down, 28%. After allowing, I think, almost 50% last year. So that is a great turnaround, but still, their guys need to tackle. One of the conversions last week was that DeAndre Swift catch, fall, jump, do whatever, and run through, I think, 20 guys, and which is odd because the defense is only supposed to have 11 guys on that side of the ball. It felt like he ran through 20. I think defensively, they've got to bring it with the pass rush. And in doing so, that's going to limit their liability for the secondary. I think either 3 of the top 5 tacklers or 4 of the top 6 tacklers in the loss to Detroit were defensive backs. On 2 levels, that's bad. You're either not getting the job done defending the run, and so your 3rd level is being forced to make stops, or you're allowing too many completions.
But also doesn't that when you, because we talked about the 3rd down, right?
Right.
So the 3rd down number, that could be skewed a little bit because they're letting people score on 1st and 2nd down.
Right,
So,
right. Yes. You know,
you know?
And to your point, on it used to be called the Burgundy and Gold grab bag. It's had 18 names in 12 years, but this in the
that was the worst one. That was the worst of the 18.
Oh, stop that. In breaking down what happens on 3rd down this past week, I looked at each of the defensive 3rd downs, this, that, the other thing. And one of the scoring drives, they didn't face a 3rd down. So they didn't need a 3rd down conversion on that play. So this is, again, I think the success or failure of Washington this upcoming Sunday is going to be how well the defense brings it. And if they don't, again, it's disturbing because this is what we think that they were going to hang their hat on the last couple of years.
So it's fair to ask then, because if they don't fix it in this game, and not that this is like a get well game, but we just watched Jared Goff throw 4 touchdowns and look like he was a guy who was picked first overall in the draft and not a guy who's on his second team that his old team basically had to pay extra to get rid of. You know, they haven't faced Aaron Rodgers yet. They haven't faced some of these, you know, sort of top tier quarterbacks. Yeah. So I'm not even saying that this is a get well game for them, but if they don't get it fixed here, then when do they get it fixed? And do they get it fixed in the season? Because it seems like some of this stuff was sort of some of it is kind of off-season talk. You know what I mean? Like stuff that should have been fixed in the off-season, and now we're in the season and you're still doing the same dumb stuff that plagued you last year. Is this something that can be fixed now?
It'll be fixed against the new Super Bowl MVP Cooper Rush next week against Dallas.
Yeah.
No, look.
Yeah, if you listen to Dallas fans.
The bigger concern, the concerning thing is, like, you talk about how often did we talk about this summer about communication and how much improved the communication was on defense. 6 explosive plays, which Ron Rivera mentioned multiple times, happened against this defense on Sunday. And even Jack Del Rio said today, there was no one common theme in each of them. It was one person doing your job. It was a different person on this, and this. That can't happen. You cannot have 6 explosive plays in a game. I don't care. Like, you know, it's just goes to show you that if somebody, that's a communication thing. If somebody's not doing their job, I'm saying, I don't know if it's necessarily a scheme thing. I know what Forrest said, that they knew what was coming, and he clarified his comments, and he goes, hats off to the coaching staff. He goes, I'm not throwing my coaches under the bus. But if you're not doing your job, but you're not in the spot you're supposed to be, that's going to expose everything. And then you have these explosive plays which go for touchdowns. So the communication has to be better, whether that's on the field, whether that's from the coaching staff to the players on the field. There's still that disconnect there, which is, for me, a huge concern.
And I also
here's the thing:
heard,
if they go into the bye week, and we're still having this discussion, I don't think Jack Del Rio makes it to the end of
the bye week's in January.
Here, but Dave Presson, piggyback off that.
No, I think that, and I've also heard comments from Ashburn. George does a great job getting out there, talking with all the players in the locker room and getting, the interviews with the coordinators and the head coach Ron Rivera. One of the comments I heard over the last few days is how they're still kind of finding a way, and they're still, they're getting better. They're getting adjusted. They brought everybody back. Right. The one benefit of bringing everybody back is that everyone is already on the same page. It feels like some guys don't have their books opened yet. And they're not just not on the same page, but there's different chapters and verses and things of that vein. And that has to be concerning, because I don't think anybody was sold on the fact that they were bringing back a bunch of all-stars this year. But I think the idea was, okay, they're bringing back the core of a unit that at least they know what they're trying to do. Yeah. And 2 weeks into the season, they were lucky to beat Jacksonville, and they deserved to lose by a lot more when they were at Detroit.
But here's the thing about continuity, though, and one of the players, I feel like it was maybe Jonathan Allen who said it earlier this week. Continuity is great, but you got to have the right pieces in place in order to make continuity worth a damn. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, they still have issues at linebacker. They still are incomplete in the secondary, even if they are better than they were in year one of the Rivera era. The defensive line, it's hard to judge entirely because Chase Young is still sidelined and still figures to be for a little while yet. So, continuity is great, but, you have to be able to make up for the lack of talent or the lack of consistency by being on the same page. And it seems like that's been, what's supposed to be the benefit of continuity is what has not played out yet, George.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, and that's really all the talk, like, oh, they went back and got John Bostic back. Okay, well, he was part of that.
There was a reason why he didn't come back.
Right. He was cut by the Saints. Okay, he knows your defense. That's fine. That helps. Fine. But no, it's, and I think, getting Cam Crow, I think, is going to make a big difference. I do. I think that is a good addition to that secondary. And, they're still missing Chase Young too. I'm not making excuses, because everybody else should be, to your point, the continuity thing should be fine. There should be no more
James
surprises.
Smith-Williams has been here for 2 years. And so it's
no surprises.
And all those
Payne,
guys. Yeah.
Sweat, up front. I mean, Holcomb, Even Jamin Davis a year ago, William Jackson now in his second year. We heard all off season how much more comfortable he is. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't look like it looks like something is still missing. And that's where you just have to, you can't figure out, well, you can figure it out now, but you have to, is it on the field or off the field? And where's the disconnect?
So do we think they fix it this year? Do we see an improvement? As a matter of fact, I'm not going to even say improvement, but do they start to live up to what we saw in 2020?
I do. I think, I just think it's kind of hard not to. I mean, how do you, at this point, you've seen what it can do. And I'm not going to throw Jack Del Rio under the bus all the time. I just, at some point,
you can throw him out of the moving bus.
Well, that's fine. But
he doesn't have to go under it. He's just got to go out of it.
At some point, look, you didn't address the things you needed to address. I mean, at some point, it's a personnel thing, and the guys aren't making tackles. I mean, the guy fell down. He made a catch. He fell down. Nobody touched him. You know what I mean? So
I think it was more the fact that he was so open that he could fall down, take his time to get up, readjust his socks, check his portfolio on his phone real quick, and then trot into the end zone.
That is the signature touchdown allowed by that defense this year, unfortunately.
Right.
Just everything went wrong. And, oh, gosh, tough one to stomach. I think the defense eventually gets better. One of those fool's gold December runs where they play over their abilities, and that gives the team enough confidence in the offseason not to do anything again.
I'm going to say
seriously, it happens. It happens all, and the league season is such 17 weeks. It's 17 games in 18 weeks. There's so many ebbs and flows that you can convince yourself something with a small sample size, and I think that's what this team's going to do this year.
I'm going to say they're not going to get better on defense because the personnel is the personnel, and we haven't even gotten. I mean, all the save for Chase Young, who in a lot of ways is a luxury and not a necessity on this defense at this point. They're healthy. They're pretty healthy. So that's not going to be the case all season long. They're going to start to lose guys at linebacker at a position where they can't afford to lose guys at linebacker. They're going to start losing guys in the secondary. So as injuries mount and so forth, that depth is going to get tested, and then they're going to be putting street free agents out there. Now, they could get lucky on the injury front, but the personnel is the personnel. So you have to sort of scheme around that. And I don't think Jack Del Rio is the guy who can do that. Real quick, guys, there was a report, and it was sort of a report piggybacking off of another report that Washington was this close to a deal with the 49ers for Jimmy Garoppolo. The deal was in place. He then had the shoulder surgery, and Washington basically pulled out and went the Wentz direction. Now, I'm very much, and it's not even unique to this situation, I think that sometimes plan A is not your best plan. And sometimes plan B and C can end up being what's best for you. I think in this particular instance, and as I'm the opposite of high on Carson Wentz, but I think that while he's not as good or as accomplished as Jimmy Garoppolo, I do think that he is a better fit for what Washington does, and they ended up getting the better situation by not going to get Jimmy G. How do you feel about that, Dave Preston?
I think I'm right on with you there. Again, it's, after it's one of those things, okay, it would have been interesting to have, Jimmy Garoppolo here, but I don't think he's the quarterback that this team needs, given what they have defensively. I think he's the type of quarterback that fits in better with a team that has a lot better personnel, like a San Francisco or when he was with New England. And I think that Carson Wentz is better suited for a team like Washington, where you gotta throw your way back into games, which he has done this year. So I think I'm not saying, again, Jimmy Garoppolo has led a team to a Super Bowl. He led the Niners last year. He upset Green Bay on the road. So it's not like he's not accomplished, but again, as to your point, I think you're spot on that Carson Wentz might not be, if you put these guys in a vacuum, Garoppolo's the better quarterback. But given the situation in Ashburn and in Landover, Carson Wentz was the right guy to bring in here.
But also, I wouldn't say Jimmy G led them to a Super Bowl. Didn't he, in the NFC Championship, throw all of 8 passes or one of those playoff games leading to the Super Bowl?
But
That's
his
kinda like saying,
intangibles led them to the Super Bowl.
Oh.
I'll be back to make that pick for Sunday's game while you guys chew the fat.
All right. Well, first of all, I haven't had lunch yet, so you don't get to tell me what I'm going to chew on.
Chewing any fat.
That's right.
I agree, though. I think it's I don't think Carson Wentz obviously was plan A for this team.
Right.
They're trying
Nor
to
should
spin
he
it,
be. That's
Right.
just dumb if he's your plan A. Right.
and they're trying to spin it like this was the guy they wanted to go get. And that's fine. You got to do it now. But Carson has not been the problem. His picks, he threw 4 first week, 3 last.
I mean, there's a
week.
case to be made. They're 0-2 if he's not.
Yeah, I agree.
Without him.
And,
Yeah.
I agree. I don't think, and I think what you're seeing what this offense can look like with the weapons and with a legit, sturdy, steady quarterback. So, it'd have been fun to see, I guess, Jimmy G, but I don't, I agree. I think Carson, if you're giving me the 2 right now, I think Carson is the guy that still would be for this offense.
All right. Well, I mean, yeah, I obviously I agree with that. I think the women in DC disagree because
Well,
Jimmy Garoppolo, that's a good looking dude. So, I mean,
we get a lot of letters about that. So we get
yeah,
a lot of fan
yeah,
mail about that.
yeah. And, we're not talking about Carson Wentz's looks, but, he's not Jimmy Garoppolo.
No.
But who is? I mean, that's a very high bar. That's a very high standard.
Kyle Shanahan likes him. Talk about a heck of a deal. He went from 23 million to what, 5 million now? I mean, that's a heck of a deal. Now
Oh,
you got
man.
a starting quarterback. If you're John Lynch.
I mean, you can't even do that on Madden. That's just insane. So, all right. So do we think Washington wins on Sunday?
I don't. I think I don't think they get blown out, but I think they do keep it competitive. Again, it's a division thing, and I think that they're going to come out a little different than they did last week. But the way this team goes, man, they could come out and blow the doors off Philly. Who knows? I have no read on it. I really didn't expect them to come out that flat last week in Detroit. They could have lost the game very easily in Detroit. I mean, and I had said that, like I could easily see them losing the game, but to come out like that is totally inexcusable. You cannot have any more of those. Not with this team, not with the veterans on this team, not with Rivera, not with this coaching staff. You cannot do that. I don't care the atmosphere. I don't care anything. You cannot come up as a professional football team and come out that flat on a Sunday afternoon.
And first
So I
of
don't
all, it's
think
the
that's gonna happen.
Lions. We're not going to act like they
Right.
were playing in like Seattle or Kansas
Or
City or somewhere
Lambeau
that
or
has like
something.
this
Yeah.
raucous crowd. You can take
Right.
the Lions crowd out of it if you do anything positive in the first half. They did not. They didn't get a first down until midway through the second quarter.
Correct.
So,
So that you can't have that.
If
I
you get
expect a
one
better
touchdown in that. Yeah.
I expect a better start. And I think Carson will play well against his former team. I think he wants to do that. I mean, I don't think that's not going to fluster him at all. Again, it's going to be, can you stop the explosive plays? I'm not going to worry about the offense. I'm
Mhm.
really not. It's can you stop the explosive plays and can you stop Hurts up front and from him from beating you with his legs? He's got to beat you with his arm as far as I'm concerned. But I think Philly I think it's too much. I just think there's some points scored. But I mean, I think, I'll give it a 5-point game.
Okay. I mean, that's close. It's a 1-score game. I'm going to say
Yeah.
it's a 1-point game. I'm going to
1
say
point.
31-30 in favor of the Eagles. And
Yeah.
again, Washington offense, and it's so weird to say because they've had such bad quarterback play over the last couple of years. Matter of fact, last 30 years, if we're being real.
Yeah, a couple years.
Yeah, right. Yeah, a couple decades that, it's weird to say, but their offense has been it's been keeping them in games, and it's been, the reason why they were even within shouting distance in Detroit.
Yeah.
And it was the thing that was, that gave them the big lead over Jacksonville. So I don't think that they're going to do that against Philly, but I mean, Philly is ripe to be had though, because again, their defense, as Dave alluded to, they're middle of the road on defense, and they have yet to really make any like big impact plays. So if Washington can continue to make that the case, they're going to hang at least 30 on the board.
And they could win the game. I just think at the end it'll be a little too much Philadelphia. But I mean, I could see Washington winning again.
Right, because
have
Philly's
no
the better
grasp.
team. Right.
Yeah.
And home field doesn't mean anything with this team. Like the fact that they're playing at home usually cuts against them. So I'm not even making that into I'm not even making that a talking point. Dave Preston, what's your prediction for Sunday?
I think what does make a difference in this game is the fact that Philadelphia has to go on the road following a Monday night game, not the fact that they're playing in front of a hostile crowd, because as we've mentioned, there's going to be some Eagles fans at the stadium. But when you travel, that takes a day off of your preparation in effect. So I think Eagles coming back to Landover on a short week, I think that's going to be an issue. But I do think that they just have too much offensively. And part of me thinks that Carson Wentz is due for a clunker. I don't think he has one this week, but I think the Eagles win 31-21.
So, first of all, I thought for a second that you were going to piggyback off my score, even though you weren't present.
Even though he didn't hear it.
What was
I said 30. I said 31-30.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got 31-21.
But let me be clear about something, though. Your point on the Eagles playing on the short week, that is spot on. That's the only reason why I think Washington is not getting blown out in this game, is because they have the rest advantage. Right. So before the season, and I'm teasing to my NFL preview, even though it's, we're 3 weeks into the season now, but in my NFL preview, I said, I see Carson Wentz in his quote unquote revenge games. I see him going 2-1. This was one of the ones that I thought that he would win, because you have the Eagles are coming off the short week. Washington's playing at home. It's less pressure on him, and it's less about him than it is when he returns to Philadelphia on a Monday night, where all hell breaks loose for Washington, generally speaking. So I thought that this was one that Washington would win before the season, but also the Eagles are better than I thought that they would be, and Washington is worse on defense anyway than I thought they would be. Yeah. So I think the fact that the Eagles are coming off the short week, that plays to Washington's advantage. I just don't think that they are good enough to fully take advantage of it. Dave Preston, another college football weekend coming up here, and your picks are on WTOP.com. Give us something to look forward to for the weekend.
Well, I mean, because of the Thursday night game this evening, with Virginia Tech, I had to get the Prestos picks done a day in advance. For the record, you talked about your preseason Burgundy and Gold season. I had them losing this game to drop to 1-1-1, but then again, I had them tying at Detroit. So there's still 2 more ties out there. Who knows?
Still could be 1-1-1 by the end of week 3. Still could be.
And that's, could you imagine, Ron, after a 1-1-1 start, he'd be like, hey, we won one, we lost one, and we tied one. I think we've shown a little bit of everything. But
I don't think he would say that.
Yeah, maybe.
I think that's
okay. To your point, a big day Saturday, guys, as Maryland begins Big Ten play. They're at Michigan, the number 4 team in the country, but this is a Michigan team that hasn't played anybody. Their 3 wins have come against clubs that are combined 2-9 with 2 FCS victories. I think there's a chance for Maryland to make a statement Saturday. I think this is a close game in the first half, but I don't think they wind up winning at the Big House. But again, there are 2 questions surrounding the Terrapins. Anytime you look into Big Ten play, can they run the ball? Not just those breakaway runs that we've seen Roman Hembry and Antoine Middleton make for touchdowns, but can they get those runs, the 3-yard run on 3rd and 2, the 4-yard run on 4th and 3? Can they make those drive-sustaining runs, and can they defensively at least slow down teams? Because they haven't been able to do that since they joined the Big Ten. They've given up 50, 60, 70 points to the likes of Ohio State and Michigan with numbing regularity. I think they're much better this year, but I don't think they're good enough this Saturday to beat Michigan. In other local college football action, it could be a dark Saturday. Navy goes on the road to East Carolina. James Madison's on the road at Appalachian State, and the Mountaineers are the darlings of college football. Thursday and Friday, Virginia Tech has a tough test against West Virginia. Virginia has a tough test at Syracuse. The offensive line of the Cavaliers is yet to find themselves. Brennan Armstrong is learning this year it's very difficult to throw the football when you're lying on your back. So we could have a very bad weekend for the Division I locals, guys.
Wow.
Actually, no. I'm going to say Maryland is going to upset Michigan in the upset of the week. Taulia Tagovailoa throws 6 touchdowns just like his brother did in Baltimore last week. You heard it here first. Book it.
I like it. I like that. I wish that were true.
It's happening.
I said at the beginning of the year that Maryland's going to get one of the games. You can go back and listen to this little huddle thing we do. One of the games of Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State, or Wisconsin. One of those this year is going to be. I don't know if it's this week, but I do think they're going to get one of them. I think
they beat
this week. It's happening.
I think they beat Wisconsin and Madison in November. I don't think it happens in the big house. Although I think this game is going to be much closer than one would think it would be. Gus Johnson is doing the game too, so there's going to be there are going to be plenty of exciting plays in that fourth quarter. So wait, he likes to cook it with Gus, as we said.
So what's your Friday going to be like? You got Syracuse, Virginia, Peter.
I know.
That's big for you.
Kippy and Buffy are getting a nice Pinot Noir. So I'm gonna, they've got some Gouda to enjoy by the tailgate too. It's if anybody has watched Syracuse play this year, last Saturday they beat Purdue in a fourth quarter that was just
not a New York show.
Drunken on meds was that fourth quarter.
It's not a New York show.
What?
Who was drunk on meds?
Not a New York show.
Game?
No, the game was drunk on meds. Not me. I don't use medication if I have a beverage. But the game was beyond silly, and I hope that's not the case this Saturday. I just think that the way that Virginia has played over the first 3 weeks, they should have lost to Old Dominion last Saturday. They barely beat the Monarchs, and they did not look good against Illinois on the road. So another road test in a louder building. It's going to be a rough night for Kippy and Buffy.
All right. I don't know who those people are. I've worked with you for 11 years, and I still to this day do not know.
Is it Kippy McBifferston and Buffy McKipperston? They're my UVA tailgate pals.
I'm gonna end the show I'm gonna end the show so I can put my hands on him. This was the DC Sports Huddle. It is sponsored by MGM National Harbor. It's time to change the game at BetMGM Sports. Enjoy the games, folks. Rob Woodfork here, along with George Wallace and Dave Preston, who is about to get a beat down.
It's funny when you threaten violence.
Yeah, I know. And especially when I do it recorded so that you can sue me later. But until next time, folks, we're breaking the huddle.